Hey fellas, before I start the video, I just want to quickly state that I'm not advocating for or encouraging the doxing, targeting, harassment, or bullying of any individuals may be mentioned or featured in this particular video. Remember, this is an opinion piece of my particular commentary on the subject matter, however controversial as it may be. So, with all being stated, let's go ahead and start the show. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Did you Panda back in action? Talk about something else, stay about something else. Yet again, it's more furry drama. Except we're going to be returning to a previously discussed topic because, remember Synthia The Dragoness? You know, remember that little song that I played in the back rooms when I was locked in the 9th dimension of hell and I was trying to get out? Yeah. So, in spite of what you all might be thinking, Synthia The Dragoness is still going strong. Alright, like, their activities haven't ceased, okay, just because they said, oh, hey everybody, I'm gonna change, alright, I'm going to reflect on all the hurt that I've caused, everything that's happened so far, I'm going to try to improve myself, work on myself, be better, and I apologize for any heartache and pain that I might have caused through my online activities, and it's just like, no. Okay, all that is bullshit, okay? I'm sorry to, burst your bubbles. It's always heartwarming to see people that are guilty of truly egregious things come out and say, I'm going to change. I'm going to work on myself. I promise. You'll see. And it's like, the apologies... I'm sorry if I come off as, a little bit jaded and cynical when I say this, but the apologies always seem to come off as, I'm sorry I got caught, okay? I do apologize. I didn't mean what I said in that context, even though I totally did, okay? You guys just really need to stop giving me so much bullshit. And, then they go right back to the same behavior that they were, being ostracized by the general community, which is the furry fandom at large, in the first damn place, but... I digress. Synthia The Dragoness, the whole ordeal goes a hell of a lot deeper than I really covered in my last video. And I feel like I discussed her to great length based on what I knew at the time. That was really just cobbled together by various communications that had been shared over Twitter. And even NidoQueer, a fairly prominent Twitch streamer, chimed in. He even commented on my channel, which is pretty fucking cool. But yeah... It was semi-recently that he just commented that Synthia The Dragoness is still going strong. Still engaging in the same behavior that they've been engaging in from then to now. So, yeah, where does the buck stop? It certainly didn't stop there. All the backlash and the bewares that have been shared over Twitter. I cannot tell you how many messages that I've seen, shared throughout Twitter where it's hey, beware of Synthia The Dragoness, alright? They are an incredibly manipulative drama monger of an individual, okay? If you value your sanity and your time, do not engage with this person, beware of them. And that might seem the least bit, problematic, because, anytime that you're sort of asserting beware of this person or that person, sometimes you're viewed as the problem because you're kind of perpetuating the drama. However, they're genuinely interested in warning others to sort of steer clear of an individual or individuals based on prior bad actions. And that's a hell of a thing, getting on, Twitter or, a video game like Roblox, Minecraft, maybe even VR chat, and engaging in problematic behavior over and over again. Someday it is going to catch up with you, alright? And, the effects may not be, blatantly clear from the get-go, but eventually all of that will catch up to you. But anyway, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Why am I making this video now? Alright, well, what was interesting is just last week, there was a Kiwi Farms thread made about Synthia The Dragoness, and it's just kind of you done fucked up when you wind up on Kiwi Farms, because Kiwi Farms, in spite of what you all might think, they typically don't start Kiwi threads until somebody has been repeatedly engaging in problematic behavior or generating enough of a shitstorm that sort of attracts their notice. In Synthia The Dragoness' case, this is sort of a rabbit hole of insanity. But let's sort of segue into what I actually wanted to bring up right here, right now. Alternative accounts. How do you feel about them? Because, just off the top of my head, I cannot imagine a situation where I would, willingly make an alternative account. I'm trying to strain my brain right now and consider, any situations, circumstances, or, situations that I would feel the need for an alternate account. Can you all think of a legitimate purpose for an alternate account, like an alt account, if you will? Because in my experiences, generally speaking, the purpose of an alt account is sort of to distance yourself from like your main account and either extract information from people or to make them think that you're somebody else entirely for the extraction of information, or maybe you have a kink that you're not particularly proud of. And I'm not talking about like bestiality, pedophilia, or anything like that. I'm talking about like, one of the more innocuous kinks that will strike you as a little bit weird, but as far as furry standards go, maybe isn't that weird, but you still feel embarrassed about it, so you make an alt account so you can enjoy the kink unabashed and without the judgment of your peers. So, like, with that little list of quote-unquote legitimate, uses of an alt account, usually it seems to be for nefarious purposes, like, by a lot of these internet personalities. And like, my boy, Ashy Paws, he would use, like, a network of alt accounts to try to manipulate and extract information out of people for dubious purposes. Usually to manipulate them into doing something they didn't want to do, or to share information about others that he didn't particularly like. But that's just my personal experiences with alt accounts, alright? See, Synthia The Dragoness, they started as Empress Sombra. And if you look up the name right now on Twitter, you will see messages going as far back as 2021, 2020 maybe, that basically circulate around Twitter about, like, bewares about Empress Sombra, various communications between they, like the victims, and Empress Sombra. Empress Sombra, during that time period from like 2021 to 2022, had changed her name to Synthia The Dragoness, henceforth why we're here today. But, apart from those two identities, like Synthia The Dragoness, they're still around, alright? You'll see a YouTube channel, you'll see a Twitch stream, you'll see a Twitter account. However, I believe their Discord may be suspended or even banned. So I don't really know off the top of my head in that regard. But what I will tell you is that during that whole time period, like for a long damn time, there was one particular identity that was shared with Synthia The Dragoness that happened to be one and the same. And it's not what you're thinking, It's like Empress Sombra and Synthia The Dragoness. There's enough of a similarity there that it's not beyond the stretch of your imagination to imagine that they're one and the same. No, this is somebody entirely different. Sphinx the Foxo, or Sphinx Foxo if you prefer. They're an identity that seems to be quite possibly the main account, the true essence of who Synthia The Dragoness is. And Sphinx the Foxo, they act like they're friends, as in Synthia The Dragoness will be doing something or trying to deflect suspicion of their dastardly behavior, and Sphinx will jump in and corroborate any stories. And if you're wondering what the extent of the problematic behavior goes, just looking at everything that I knew in the past video of Synthia The Dragoness, they seem to be targeting people of mid-tier internet celebrities, Nidoqueer being the one off the top of my head, but various others. They would join a Discord server, overview the leadership structure, if there was a particular purpose or a reason for people to be there. They would try to, if there was a Patreon available, they would try to, subscribe to the highest tier they possibly could to show their dedication and good faith to whoever was the internet personality that was at the head of all this. And then they would try to engage in flirtatious behavior with them in an attempt to sort of ingratiate themselves to this individual or individuals. Nidoqueer was smart enough not to really fall into that. Granted, they already had a boyfriend, possibly husband. But basically they shut that shit down pretty fucking quickly, and Empress Sombra was, so taken aback by the fact that anybody would say no to her that they actually tried to get Nidoqueer in hot water, saying that they were a pedophile and that they were going to report them to the authorities, basically kicking up a shitstorm to try to get Nidoqueer to back off. And Nidoqueer hasn't. Granted, God bless the boy, because he certainly went through a lot more bullshit than he deserved. He spread the word. That's, in fact, how I learned about all of this. I saw the message shared one day, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? That was the start of my, descent into insanity. but it gets a little bit crazier. See, in the last video, I didn't mention this because I legitimately didn't know, but Synthia The Dragoness, like, if you compare, like, the behavior on that account, it's considerably more cleaner. It's almost like the public image of Spharynx, because Spharynx, what they've been doing is they've been in contact with, like, various minors out there, and they seem to be obsessed with, like, you know, attaining close relationships with various people. They've gone so far, like, Synthia The Dragoness would brag about how they loved to manipulate people emotionally. You know, get very close to them to the point that they feel like they're very comfortable with one another, and then break their heart at an inopportune time to get a sick satisfaction out of that. Now, that's pretty fucking, like, despicable on its own, but no, like, there have been people that have gone so far. This is referring to Spharynx. This is referring to the account behind Synthia The Dragoness. That have gone so far as to say that she would actually try to blackmail people into sharing nudes of themselves. And these were fairly young kids, like 16 years of age, maybe even 15 years of age, with the implication that they would report, like, all of their internet activity to their parents if they did not comply. So, you know, not exactly good. But maybe, like, I should take a step back and sort of, like, bring you up to speed with everything that I know. So, my initial suspicions were correct. Synthia The Dragoness seems to hail from the UK, Manchester, I believe. I'm not going to share an exact address or anything like that, but I have seen what they look like, allegedly, and yeah, it's about what you expect. You know, young 20-something basically going online, complains about perpetually being lonely, complains about how nobody really loves them, in fact, in spite of the fact that they have a small congregation of followers and supporters that are willing to put up with their bullshit, and continues to engage in dastardly bastard behavior at the expense of others. Usually they're emotional heartstrings, usually, like, you know, followed by, like, the implication that something bad will happen to them if they don't comply or they try to get in her way in some way. I keep saying her because I'm not entirely sure if they're legitimately trans, alright? But they certainly want to perpetuate the illusion that they are a female, alright? And I say that because Synthia The Dragoness, you know, mother of all dragons and such like that, very, like, feminine use of pronouns, trying to be seductive with various people. They're like a complete fucking idiot, though. That's why all of this has sort of been piling up over a relatively short span of time, alright? So, Spharynx the Cute Foxo, or Spharynx Foxo, whatever you prefer, unfortunately, I cannot find communications, like, you know, about them on Twitter because they locked their account. And when you lock your account, only people that are followed by you, like, as in, you sort of sanction them, you allow them to follow you allow them to see your tweets, replies, media, what have you. Only people that are following and have been sort of sanctioned by Spharynx can view past, like, tweets. But, no, various people had taken screen caps at the time of any particular incidents occur and would share them willingly as a beware. And what I've seen is quite disturbing. It went so far as one of the people that had commented on my YouTube channel, you know, the video where I covered Synthia The Dragoness, we got into contact, and they had, at the time, been in contact with Synthia The Dragoness. However, you know, Spharynx the Cute Foxo, they're one and the same, so if I refer to one, I'm referring to the other. When I make a distinguishing, like, statement about one or the other, remember, they're two different identities, and there are subtle differences in how they, you know, communicate with people. But yeah, Spharynx, they seem to be obsessed with the idea of perpetuating a polyamorous relationship with as many people as possible. And, like, this is right off the top of my head, so I do apologize. You're just gonna have to trust me on this one. I know, terrible thing to say, but, like, it was as high as 81 people. Like, some egregious number of people that, like, was considered part of the family. And it's like, dude, no, like, I've seen some open relationships that kind of push the envelope, but 81, like, fucking people, there's no fucking way that you're going to be able to share yourself with that many people and maintain as close of a relationship with them as any other of your polyamorous partners. It was some egregious amount of people, but they were trying to start a Discord server that was centered around baby furs. Pretty sus right there, right? I know. It gets a hell of a lot worse, but Somebody that was actually put into an admin position, they actually nuked the server from orbit when they found out about various things that were happening, like the age of the people that were in there, the activities that Spharynx was engaging in, as in, like, getting in contact with minors and trying to manipulate them into sharing nudes or getting sexy with her, and like even threatened to go to the parents of one because they wouldn't engage and be a part of this polyamorous relationship. Simultaneously, when you switch over to Twitter and most of this stuff happened on Discord. When you switch over to Twitter and you see Synthia The Dragoness, it was as, recently as Easter that they were complaining about how that they were so lonely, that nobody loves them, that they have nobody. In spite of the fact that they had sufficient numbers of followers come forward and be like, hey, you always have us. And it just didn't seem to be good enough for them. And it's just like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I would like to also mention that Spharynx, they even bragged about how I made a exposed video. Now, how did somebody like this engage in this amount of behavior over the span of a relatively short span of time, several months to a year, and not have some serious repercussions occur to them? I mean, it's not to the lack of effort from the overall community, because various people did step forward to assert that Synthia The Dragoness was no bueno. And it wasn't really that far of a stretch of the imagination to believe that Spharynx and Synthia were the same person, because they were dumb enough to reveal that fact, in private DMs with people. They're not particularly bright. They didn't really spend a lot of time trying to cover their tracks. They didn't really spend a lot of time trying to sort of ensure that nobody would find their deep, dark secret, and they just continued as is, The activities of one account would sort of blur into the other account if you look at the messages as a whole, and it's just kind of striking to me, because it's just like, dude, did you think this through? What was the entire point of you setting up an alt account? Because if Synthia The Dragoness is supposed to be your public image, don't you think that you should probably, differentiate the activities or the behavior and the manner by which you engage with others, based on those two identities? You separate one, you separate the other. But no, they just come right out and say, when they reach out to somebody, it's me, Synthia. Let's get down jiggy with it. So I don't know. All of that to say, Spharynx, if you look at Spharynx, they blocked their account, as I mentioned. It was fairly recent that they did that. But also, Synthia The Dragoness, their catch-all, end-all, be-all excuse for all of this is that they were hacked. That all of the messages that they had dispensed that make them look bad was because of a hacker. Because, Iranian super hackers is certainly a convenient fallback excuse. And totally legitimate, because Iran really cares about the lives and activities of various furries here in the United States. Or, I should say, the Western countries of the world where, a lot of furries have close interactions with one another. They really care about that, I'm sure. Yeah, thank you, Kira the Wolf, for making that a convenient and legitimate excuse for anything bad that happens. Because, hackers have all this time on their hands to do stuff, right? They have all this time to waste time in, investing in breaking whatever security measures happen to be in place, to a virtual no-name Twitch streamer and be able to masquerade as them to make them look bad in the face of the furry fandom. It's think about the return on the investment. I think Synthia The Dragoness had something like 67 followers last I checked. Might be more, might be less, but from what I can recall, the amount of followers was almost equal to the amount of people that they were following themselves. So it wasn't exactly, the ratio wasn't really substantial to corroborate the idea that they're a famous internet celebrity. They're a no-name. As far as their earlier activities, they were trying to get off the ground on Twitch to be, a speedrunner. Unfortunately, being a speedrunner, they didn't really get a whole lot of attention because they probably weren't very successful at it. I say probably because I can't really be bothered to watch the gameplay of somebody that likes to diddle kids. At least that's what it's really appearing as to me. Synthia The Dragoness, a pedophile? No way. I just never would have imagined. And it's important for you to bear in mind that Synthia The Dragoness, they seem to be At first, it seemed like they were orbiting kids, and then it sort of turned into the idea that they are definitely interested in kids, because if you look at Svaring's Foxo's, like, you know, interactions with people, a lot of them are very young. People have come out publicly to say that, like, I am 16 years of age, or I am, like, this amount of age, and, like, even I can recognize that this is bad behavior by a quote-unquote adult. So what's interesting is that there was a guy named Cosmic, and Cosmic made a YouTube video, and it was a very short video. It's one of those little fragments of information. Cosmic, if you're listening right now, because I know you commented on the, like, you know, YouTube video that I posted about Synthia The Dragoness. Forgive me if I mention you in name, but it was interesting that they had somehow gotten into contact with Synthia The Dragoness, their main account on Discord, and they actually got them to come into a Discord call, and they were just asking fairly basic questions like, hey, like, you know, why were you doing this? Why were you doing that? And, like, when I listened to that, the one recurrent communication, like, the only response that really stuck in my mind from Synthia The Dragoness is, I wasn't on my medication. I can't be held responsible for what I did. I was not in control. I wasn't on I didn't take my medication. And Cosmic stayed fairly calm throughout the whole interaction. It was just like, dude, you did this today. Like, earlier today, you were flirting with minors. Can you explain that? I didn't take my medication. And they eventually rage quit the call and just left. So, yeah. The two most common fallbacks for Synthia The Dragoness, or Svaring's Foxo, whichever you prefer, they're one and the same. However, their activities differ only slightly. Synthia The Dragoness has kind of cleaned up their act. Kind of. However, they keep insisting that they're making the changes necessary to live a productive, meaningful life, and that any criticism from the overall community as to their past actions is completely unfounded. It was the responsibility of a hacker or hackers, and that various trolls are just, like, you know, coming after them. And what's ironic is that Synthia The Dragoness will actually make call-out posts and beware posts about other people. Usually the critics and individuals that have been, like, fallen victim to her in the past, but more recently it seems like a recurrent behavior is that they would get into contact with people and they would talk about their mutual interest in cub porn and various other questionable forms of pornography. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by cub is when the characters displayed in various imagery or pictures online, usually, like, they're portrayed as younger, you know, like below the age of 18, below the legal age, and it's kind of been a very controversial subject. If you go to Ink Bunny, like, you'll see a lot of cub art, okay? Like, you know, and Ink Bunny runs a little bit differently from Fur Affinity and various other places, because Fur Affinity, for a while, hopefully it's still the case, but they kind of banned, like, cub content. You have to label all of your characters as being 18 plus or older. And it's, like, not necessarily a bad thing. However, the only reason that this is so controversial is that technically these are subjects of fiction, all right? There's no actual pornography being dispensed, quote unquote. It's all being drawn by artists. However, you know, the implications of the subject matter is enough to suggest interest in pedophilia, which becomes controversial, okay? I'm not here to debate that. I'm just saying that it's a little bit questionable when you have somebody that's interested in that subject matter and also, like, knowingly getting into contact with kids. That's when it becomes a really serious problem, all right? You can understand my concern when I'm making this video. But, like, you know, selectively, I guess it would really depend on if the person would try to, you know, backstab Synthia in any way, if they would try to undermine them in any way, or they wouldn't say yes to something that Synthia The Dragoness asked. What they would do is they would try to make a call-out post for them on Twitter and just be like, hey, look at this person, they're a pedophile. And they would just, like, revel in that and just be like, you're fucked. Like, I'm reporting everything that you've done to the authorities. I'm reporting your account. I'm sending your information to the authorities. I'm going to ensure that, you know, the legal system is aware of you and your activities, and blah, blah, blah. In spite of the fact that Synthia The Dragoness, as Svaring's the Foxo, is just as guilty, if not more so, of the same behavior of people that can be called kindred spirits, I suppose. They both like cub porn. They both like various other aspects of younger, like, individuals out there, you know, in a sexual manner. Oh boy. So yeah, what am I trying to say here? Do not be fooled by Synthia the Dragoness acting like they're all squeaky clean, that they're only a Twitch streamer and nothing more, and that they're engaging all this behavior. They have done various other things that fall outside of everything I've described thus far. Like, for instance, there was one exchange of Discord messages where somebody was on their way to work. I forget their name off the top of my head, but it was just interesting because Synthia the Dragoness absolutely had to get into contact with them. They absolutely had to get into a Discord call with them, and they absolutely had to have interactions with them right there, right then, right now. And obviously the person didn't, because that's the least bit of a display of pretty irrational and crazy behavior, okay? Like, it's no stretch of the imagination to say that Synthia the Dragoness displays a lot of behaviors that mark them as insane. A lot of people on Twitter would describe them as absolutely insane, okay? There's a reason that when I made this video, I go ahead and say that, like, that was the beginning of my descent into madness, because, like, this is a rabbit hole of insanity, make no mistake. But it gets a hell of a lot more crazy from there, alright? And that whole situation that I described, where there was that underage minor that was, like, being blackmailed into sharing nudes, it was usually under the threat of Synthia the Dragoness committing suicide. Yeah, anything that they could possibly say or do to, like, emotionally manipulate people into doing things that they wanted in that moment was on the table, all right? Like, no dignity, no shred of, like, you know, reasonable mindedness or, like, you know, decency. No, all that flew right out the window ever since they hit online, it appears. Like, they are really out for themselves in that regard, and they seem desperate for having the attention of others, because, you know, let's think about this. There are plenty of people out there that are fairly desperate for attention, and you seek attention in various other methodologies. Like, maybe you start drama. That's one method of getting attention, but other people, they will say or do things like to somebody that's in their presence to try to get attention from them. And, you know, it's like for that reason that a lot of furries seem like attention whores, all right? They really want that sense of validation from another person. In Synthia the Dragoness' case, like, in spite of how many people are willing to put up with their bullshit, willing to get close and personal with them, they never seem satisfied. They always seem to want more. That's why, like, the number of individuals that they're in contact with for that polyamorous relationship is so high and outrageously high, because they want that validation. They want, like, you know, but as soon as they get attention and regard and respect from one person, they seem to jump to another. They want to keep that first person, but they want to keep them around their pinky finger, all right? Like, they move on to the next person to sort of expand all of that. Now, obviously, if you're going to be doing that, you're going to eventually lose some of those earlier people, because they're not going to stick around if they're not getting the same satisfaction that they got when you first got into contact with them. They're going to move on for people that are more, you know, compatible with them. In Synthia the Dragoness' case, like, they just never seem to be satisfied. They have to constantly expand that sort of retinue of individuals, usually minors, but not entirely, like, just minors. Also, that whole situation that I mentioned before with, like, that anonymous individual that got into contact with me through my YouTube channel. Yeah, they were masquerading as a minor. At first, they kind of put all cards on the table, and, like, they baited Synthia the Dragoness into sharing some information with them. They were acting like they were into cub porn, like Synthia the Dragoness was. They were acting like they were interested in the same things that Synthia the Dragoness was, and then they sort of, like, showed their hands later after they had gotten a sufficient amount of information. They took it a step further, because by that point, they already knew a lot of the points of contacts that Synthia the Dragoness was on. They knew the Discord servers that they were a part of, and it was at that point that they made an alternative account. This is one of the few legitimate reasons to, like, make an alt account that I could wager, is that you would masquerade as one of the victims that, the targets, I should say, that would be the victims of Synthia the Dragoness. And they pretend to be a little kid that didn't know any better, had very strict parents that would constantly monitor their online activities so they couldn't get into a Discord call, otherwise it would arouse suspicion because, we kind of agreed they did not have the voice to really pull off an underage minor. So, although I've heard various voices out there from people that are fairly young, so I don't know, but Synthia the Dragoness was kind of gullible and naive enough to sort of get into contact with them. They would initiate Discord calls with them and be willing to share an oodles and oodles of information that were the least bit damaging to their mode of character, but also very incriminating as to their true intentions, engaging with minors. But if I need any more assurances as far as proof of ill intentions or wrongdoing, I got it. All right, I got to watch it and hear it in real time. I had to keep my mouth shut, but I got to witness that. I got to bear witness to that in real time right in front of me. So yeah, not a very good look for Synthia the Dragoness or Sphinx the Cute Foxo.
Birdo Dragon is Felix, just an alt. What do you mean? We are in VC right now. They don't want you no more. They want you to have me instead. Why did they delete my friend request? Yeah. Felix doesn't want you no more. We are in a call right now. And you are lying too, because I know they are at their job till 11 o'clock Eastern. Yeah. So what is going on here? No, we live together, stupid. You don't live with Felix. Okay, well, tell me what Felix's PayPal is and I will do it. Just then I can trust you. It's clear you're extorting me otherwise. I'm in a call with them right now, so do what you want. I also have your bank details from him too, so if you want to comply and donate, feel free. 450 pounds right now or you will never see Felix again. 30 minutes, time's ticking. Also, you are blocked until you comply. I know what is right and is best for you. Also makes me laugh because Felix is a pedo. I am helping them. I am closing these DMs, so I can see your messages. I'm a trained armed officer, so hurry up. Pay in toodles for now. I have your address, by the way. See ya!
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
Whew. I do not know how I missed this, but yeah, Synthia the Dragoness is not above extorting people, alright? They have tried to extort certain individuals for money based on emotionally manipulating them. For instance, one of the more egregious situations I saw was that one of the, I'm going to say, kink partners of an individual out there, she tried to extort 450 pounds of cash from them, with the implication that they were never going to be speaking to their master ever again. Foot fetish shit, if you're into that, no judgments from me, but I'm just saying that this is one of the individuals that had interest in somebody that was their master. And basically, Synthia the Dragoness was trying to make it appear that they were in direct communication with them, and that it was by her decision that she could make it so that they would never have interactions with each other ever again. And, putting the gun to their head, metaphorically speaking, and basically saying, hey, you only got 30 minutes to comply. 450 pounds, please. Or you never get to speak to your master again. TikTok, motherfucker. And it's just goddamn. One of the few times that they seemed a little bit more clever than they usually do. Still very fucking stupid. If you're a reasonable, cognizant individual that's aware of everything around you and your surroundings, you're probably not going to fall for it. But at the same time, we are talking about various people out there that could be caught at different times of the day and their mood and various other aspects of their mode of character. They could, be under emotional duress, and having your desired partner, somebody that helps you get off in the sexy way, that's going to probably, jostle your jimmies a little bit. You're probably not going to be feeling too pleasant about all that, and you're probably going to not be thinking clearly, and you might even fall for it if you're, naive enough to sort of buy into the idea that Synthia the Dragoness has some sort of power over you. Thankfully, the individual is smart enough to sort of not fall for it, but at the same time, the effort should be indicative enough of how manipulative Synthia is, and how immoral that they are in their interactions with others. So, yeah, just one of the many examples of truly dastardly behavior that I was describing before. Apart from being a pedo.
I am unable to guilt trip. It's against my religious rights.
Something I forgot to mention about Synthia, I mentioned in my last video. I'll go ahead and mention it again. They like to brag about getting into really, really long Discord calls for some inexplicable reason. I don't know what the point of that is. I really don't, because it's like, is there any point to having, like, out of 60 hours that you're in a Discord call, is it really worth bragging about if that 60 hours was spent largely in dead silence, like radio silence? Because you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to do things to take care of yourself, you know. Presumably, Synthia probably doesn't have a job. That's the only way I can sort of, you know, ascertain in my head that they have time to do any of this. But at the same time, you gotta eat, you gotta sleep, you should shower, you should exercise like good like hygiene, but whether or not Synthia the Dragoness does, I don't really know. But there's no way that you're going to be glued to your seat, remain in a roughly comfortable like state of mind, and be able to have a cognizant conversation with somebody, like even somebody that I absolutely loved to death. I could not imagine myself being stuck there for like, you know, 40 plus hours in a nonstop Discord call. And they would increasingly push the bar out and out and out. I knew of one of the two individuals that had gotten into contact with me over Discord. They were still parsing a lot of, like, you know, the dead silence of calls, just sort of like looking for anything implicating and, like, you know, the least bit damning for Synthia the Dragoness' case. So, all this to say that Synthia the Dragoness has not changed, okay? Everything that they have asserted on, like, YouTube, on my channel, in fact, on various other, like, you know, channels that might have covered her already, I have no idea. But what I will say is, like, the repeated thing that I keep seeing, either on Twitter, YouTube, or various other forms of social media, is that they're trying to change, that they're trying to move on from all this, that they're trying to learn and become a better person. But yeah, like, thankfully, there's enough people out there that were exposed to her. They've seen, like, ongoing behaviors that are the least bit damaging. And, you know, like, I keep saying that because it is damaging. Like, think about it. Imagine yourself at the age of either 13 to 16, all right? You're still developing. The hormones are still kicking through your body. You're going through, like, the tail end of puberty, and you're on your way to becoming a mature adult, whether you're male or female. And, like, you get on to the online space, and maybe you're not entirely sure about, you know, your friends IRL. You need people that you can get into contact with and be comfortable around. You can be yourself around. You can share various, like, you know, tidbits of information about yourself to them without the fear of judgment or repercussions. And here you have somebody that you think is your friend, but really you're just at the whims of this individual. And one day, like, all of your seductive behavior, like the seductive behavior that has been sort of foisted onto you, maybe you're, like, you know, all for it because you feel like it's bringing you closer to that person and you suddenly feel more connected. But then they ask you, hey, can you take a picture of your body and send it to me? You know, like, just take off all your clothes, take some pictures of yourself and send it to me. And you don't really want to, but they become more and more like, aggressive about it. To the point that they're threatening you. They're like saying, you'll never have a friend again. I'm going to, like, everybody that we have in the Discord, like, together, I'm going to tell them all your dirty little secrets. No one's ever going to talk to you again. Not based on any particular instance, it's just the manner by which Synthia the Dragoness engages with relatively young people. There's always the threat of some nefarious bad action that's going to befall them if they do not listen to what she has to say in the moment, which is truly egregious. But it's damaging to the young mind, That's like a trust issue. Suddenly, somebody that was relatively close to you, that you felt comfortable around, that you felt close to, is suddenly stabbing you in the back because you didn't buckle to their, truly, like, unreasonable demands. And, illegal behavior, by the way, because if that person happens to be, like, 16 years of age, maybe a little bit older, like 17 years of age, maybe a little bit younger, not only is the minor, like, depending on the state or country or province or what have you that this all takes place in, not only are they on the hook in a legal sense, because, like, there have been some crazy laws passed where if you're caught being underage, sending nudes of yourself to other people, you get in trouble too, because you're disseminating child pornography, which is kind of a fucked up case. Like, I would really, if I was a judge, I would sort of review, like, is the minor asking for it? Do they just not know any better? Or are they just consumed by lust? Like, by and large, it would always be the adult, like, at fault. They know that what they're doing is wrong and that it should, like, cease and desist as soon as possible. But in Sparings for the Foxo or Synthia the Dragon's case, the law doesn't really apply in cyberspace, all right? Like, they can sort of, swap back and forth between the two identities because they're both active on Discord and, like, Twitter. At least the accounts are still up. Sparings the Foxo, I haven't seen a whole lot of action from ever since they locked down our account because I can't, They can only converse with people that are following them and that they follow and that they're both, like, in communion with and are sanctioned by the account. Synthia the Dragoness, though, I think they're laying low because I haven't really seen a whole lot of egregious behavior since then. However, people like NidoQueer, remember, various other people had stepped forward to, like, share their personal horror stories about their interactions with Synthia the Dragoness, and, the consensus between all of them is that they're an incredibly manipulative and insane individual, masquerading as a female online, a female dragoness online, and trying to do speedruns and get into really, really long Discord calls to break records, supposedly. Apart from all that, if I think of anything else, I'll be sure to share it with you all. But I figure that there might as well be a follow-up all this. I guess the conclusion is, and, like, maybe I'm being influenced by one of Lagovert's videos, but change isn't something that you can just declare to the world and it's like, I'm changed, you see? I'm so much better than I was. Everything that I did in the past is completely washed clean. I'm a different individual now. No. Change only happens when you want to change. Change is going to happen inevitably. Various things are going to happen in your life that are going to influence you to being one way or the other. In the face of particular tragedies, maybe you have a more sullen outlook on life than you otherwise would if you were an optimist. If good fortune happens to your life, maybe you become overconfident in your own abilities and the good graces of life, and you feel like the good times are going to last forever. Whichever the case, change is inevitable. However, like, in the face of particular behaviors, they can either be reinforced based on the conditions surrounding you. I'm talking about the people in your life. I'm talking about the conditions that you live in, like, your standard of living being one of them, the environment that you reside in, maybe the state, maybe the neighborhood, maybe, like, the city that you dwell in. But, like, various external factors, your environmental factors, are going to change you, either slowly or quickly, depending on what's actually happening around you. But also the people in your life are going to be the biggest influence on you. And, like, you can't just stand up one day and say, I'm going to change. You need to want to change in order to actually change, like, more quickly than what would the environmental factors around you be influencing you, So Synthia The Dragoness, like, as, like, you know, that just felt like a cop-out, just saying that they were going to change. I was cautiously optimistic when I saw that hit my YouTube channel, like, the very day of when I saw that comment. I was hopeful that Synthia The Dragoness would actually make a legitimate effort to change and be a better person, maybe learn from her mistakes, maybe learn that exacting quote-unquote revenge on people for the same heartache and pain that they felt on them wasn't really going to make them feel better, number one, and was immoral behavior at the very least, if not dastardly, despicable behavior at the worst. And no, it was a good cover-up, I guess, because they kept the act up when they realized that the heat was on and various people were sort of grabbing their pitchforks and torches to come after her. But no, it's Synthia's the Foxo. Like, if you look at any of the communications that I described to you up to this point, you're going to see that change is the least bit, like, you know, happening. It's not really occurring because they're still engaging in contact with minors. They're still trying to extract some sense of closeness with them, all as a mask for their lustful, like, impulses that they feel. They want immediate gratification in, you know, finding minors that are too gullible or naive to really say no to their advances and to recognize that they're a very predatory individual. Granted, they're also a very stupid, ignorant one at that, because they can't cover their tracks worth a damn, and at the same time, they're a shitty Twitch streamer, speedrunner, okay? Like, whatever, like, you know, I think I did actually look at their Twitch channel, and it's more atrocious than mine, because, like, I only do this as a hobby. Like, I think it's pretty cool that I can acquire, like, even a small audience of 10 people, and just be, like, playing a game and making commentary all the while in real time. But, like, if they're trying to do this professionally, they have to, like, one thing, they need to redouble their efforts. Number two, they need to stop talking to the kids trying to get into their pants and, like, actually focus on something that's going to get them the return on their investment that they want in time. But, yeah, as far as getting them banned off of anything, getting them mass reported on anything else, I am not advocating any of that, but I will tell you all this, the same thing that has been echoed time and time again by various victims out there on Twitter: stay the fuck away from Synthia The Dragoness and Synthia's the Foxo, the cute Foxo, as they so like to say. They are, like, there's nothing that you're going to get out of that, all right? Like, there's no, like, you know, silver lining to their mode of character. They don't even seem that interesting of an individual, like, at the best of times. They just seem like a glorified sex pest that, honestly, the sooner that they get banned, the better off we're all going to be. But anyway, I think that's about all I really have to share about all of this. I just find it a very interesting case to sort of mention to you all, and a good example of one of the more problematic aspects of the furry fandom. Because Synthia The Dragoness, like I said in my last video, they're not necessarily unique in all of this. There are various other people out there that are desperate for attention, but at the same time, in their quest to sort of fulfill themselves, feel like they're close to people, and garner, like, a small group of friends or a following, they also sort of force themselves on others, because there's various communications that you'll see that, like, the individual that she's trying to contact is not interested in getting in with them, as in entertaining the notion of a relationship with, like, Synthia's the Foxo or Synthia The Dragoness. And that's partly why she got noticed, because enough people that were not buying what she had to sell, like, stepped up to plate and decided to broadcast to the wider furry fandom that this person was no bueno. All right? So, word to the wise. I don't know how many of you are into contact with older individuals if you happen to be underage. I looked at the demographics of my channel. Most of you seem to be between the ages of 18 to your early 30s. Nothing wrong with that. However, like, I have noticed that there's a small proportion of individuals that happen to fall below all of that, as in below the age of 18. But word to the wise, just beware out there, alright? The people online, unless you know them IRL, like, these people are they can be your friends. You can get some pretty good relationships, like as far as like friends and stuff like that online. I would not recommend like actual relationships online, all right? Long distance doesn't always work for like everybody involved. But I have heard of some very heartwarming stories of like seemingly like, you know, outlandish like situations that turned into something truly beautiful, as in a long-term relationship coming from online. But by and large, it doesn't really seem to work for most people. That's why there's so much drama here. One of the reasons. But I would definitely encourage you all to sort of, you know, word to the wise, just beware of what kind of information you share with people. Never share nudes of yourself unless you know like who you're actually talking to. And just be cognizant of the the ties that you're making with people online, because not everybody here has your best interest at heart. In fact, a lot of people do not. Either they don't really give a shit, or they're actively trying to get something out of you, or they're going to fuck you over to get a laugh at your expense. One of the three. So that all to be stated, like, you know, just be careful, all right? That's the best thing I could say. Anyway, that's about all I have for this particular subject matter. Like, obviously, if there's any like pieces or fragments of information that I missed along the way, I'm going to be sure to include that in the video because it's worth mentioning, especially now. All this happened circa March into early April. So as far as my hiatus goes, I'm a very busy guy these days. I try to maintain my relationships with various friends out there while also working on personal projects and keeping to my work, my IRL work, 9-to-5 job, 5 days a week. And 40 hours doesn't sound like that much of an investment in the job, but it certainly eats up a lot of my time and focus. Anyway, let's go ahead and just turn our attention to this beautiful backdrop. I hope you enjoyed the scenery here, but till next time, guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one. Hey fellas, thanks for watching the video today. I really appreciate it. Would you care to hit the like button and subscribe for more? You know I really appreciate that, right? And hey, if you're in the mood for gaming, happy to check me out on Twitch sometime, link in the description below. Anyway, till next time guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one.